The former Beatle, who was 40, was hit by several bullets as he and his wife, Yoko Ono, were returning from a recording studio. It was shortly before 11 o'clock last night, and they just left their car to enter the luxury Dakota apartment block on New York's West Side. Police said Lennon was shot by David Chapman, aged 25, after an argument over an autograph. Mrs. Lennon called for help. Residents from the building went to her aid. Mrs. Lennon went with her husband to hospital, but he was dead on arrival. She said later, in a statement issued through friends, that John loved and prayed for the human race. Please do the same for him. Crowds quickly gathered outside the apartment block as news of the murder spread. Some among them said the arrested man had been hanging around the building for some days. Police said the gunman had got John Lennon's autograph earlier in the evening. They said it wasn't uncommon for people to wait at the entrance to the Dakota because many celebrities lived there. According to the police account, the gunman fired 5 or 7 shots at Lennon.
Mr. Lennon was struck several times. We're not positive at this time as to how many times he was struck. He went up the stairs. There are 5 steps that lead up into the watchman's area of the Dakota. He went through that area into an office inside where he collapsed to the floor.
Police say the motive for the murder is not clear, but they've described the man they arrested as mentally unbalanced. A police car took Lennon to the Roosevelt Hospital, where doctors said he'd been hit 7 times. He was dead by the time he arrived. Lennon's body was taken from the hospital for police examination, and a search was being made of the suspect's room at a block in another part of the city. All night, crowds, many of them weeping, waited outside Lennon's home, showing the reverence in which the founder of the Beatles was held by more than one generation. The news of Lennon's death has been broadcast all over the world. Moscow radio reported it, and Yugoslav radio played many of his records. In Lennon's hometown, the Lord Mayor of Liverpool said he hoped they'd be able to do something to commemorate the singer, perhaps by founding a college for musicians. Paul McCartney says he can't yet take in the news. He said John was a great guy who'll be missed by the whole world. George Harrison is said to be deeply shocked and hasn't yet contacted the other Beatles. Ringo Starr was on holiday when he was told about the murder. He immediately flew back to America. John Lennon's first wife, Cynthia, described his death as tragic, pointless, and untimely. With her was their son, Julian, who's 17. Although his parents' marriage ended in 1968, he's always had a close relationship with his father. Anger at John Lennon's murder was expressed by George Martin, who worked with him as producer of most of the Beatles' records. Gavin Hewitt asked him how he'd responded to the news.
I feel frightfully sorry for Yoko and Sean and all the people who loved him so much. But I also feel very angry that it's such a senseless thing to happen, that one of the great people that have happened this century have been just wiped out by a madness. I'm very angry about it. I'm angry about violence generally, which seems to be increasing. And I'm angry against those people who are responsible for spreading it too. If only responsible people could get together and try and reduce this violence, this kind of thing wouldn't happen.
During the decade that they were together, the Beatles had bigger record sales than any other musical act. And Bill Hamilton looks back on a success story that has now come to a tragic end.
Even as a schoolboy, John Lennon lived for music. At first it was skiffle. Then came concerts at a dingy basement club in Liverpool. By the late 50s, the nucleus of the Beatles was established. But at that stage, they were singing other people's songs.
Oh, ain't she sweet? We'll see you walking down that street. Yes,
Within 2 years of Brian Epstein taking over as their manager, a new phenomenon was sweeping across the country: Beatlemania. Wherever they went, the Beatles were acclaimed with enthusiasm which bordered on frenzy. And the driving force behind them was songwriter and rhythm guitarist John Lennon. When Flower Power arrived, the Beatles appeared on the first worldwide TV satellite.
All you need is love. All you need is love. Love is all you need.
Lennon began his second marriage by spending his entire honeymoon with Yoko Ono in bed as a public demonstration against violence. After the Beatles split, he moved to America. A successful solo career followed, but recently he'd become something of a recluse. Meanwhile, the Cavern Club in Liverpool has been turned into a car park. The only reminders of its association with Lennon and the Beatles are a statue paid for by the group's fans and a new club over the road with the same name. Lennon's last interview was with Radio 1 DJ Andy Peebles. He talked about his latest LP and family life with Yoko.
We're pretty damn steady, I'd say that. We're in good condition. Thank you very much. It's great to talk to you. And it's not kindness. We want to sell the record and we want to talk to the English too.
Here in the valley of indecision, I don't know what to do. I feel you slipping away. I feel you slipping away. I'm losing you. I'm losing you.
John Lennon, who was murdered last night.